right, so let's just dive right in. We are talking about the arrest of Sean Diddy Combs. And, you see the headlines, right? It's racketeering, sex trafficking. Like, those are some serious charges right there. But what's interesting to me, at least, is the lack of response from big names in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Considering how...
It's interesting you say that because
Yeah.
this Diddy persona that we all know is so intertwined with who he is, and the accusations are so serious
Right.
that it's not just like a PR nightmare for these people to get involved. This is organized crime. We're talking potentially decades behind bars. These are major accusations.
Yeah, and it's not just a little scandal that you can kind of sweep under the rug.
Yeah. This is the real deal. And I think that's why you see people like Ice Cube coming out and saying, I have never been to one of his parties. Like, being associated with that is...
like a career ender right now.
Yeah, like, don't even put me in that category.
Right.
But then on the other side of the coin, you have people like the Kardashians being like, oh, remember those parties? They were so fun. Khloe's talking about half the people were butt naked. And, Kourtney's like, oh, yeah, Kanye and I had this epic night. And just like, it's fascinating, isn't it? Because on the one hand, you have the very real and serious nature of these accusations. And then you have this kind of nostalgic, almost positive spin from some of these celebrities. And it makes you wonder, was this just seen as normal behavior in these circles? Or is it selective memory at play? Because this culture of silence is a very real thing in Hollywood. People protect their careers, their connections.
And they stay quiet.
Absolutely.
And it makes you wonder what was happening at those parties. And then you add on this whole other layer of Justin Bieber being mentored by Diddy.
Oh, absolutely. And that's what's so crucial.
Yeah, he's just a kid.
That mentorship, right? Because it's inherently unbalanced. You have someone like Diddy at the height of his career, power, influence.
Yeah.
And this young artist who is eager to please and wants to make it in the industry. And so you look at those old videos of them together, knowing what we know now about these accusations, it casts a whole new light on their relationship.
Yeah, and people were pulling up those lyrics that ended up being totally fake about Bieber, like singing about the parties.
Oh, yeah, right.
But it just goes to show you how quickly misinformation can spread online, especially with a high-profile case like this.
It's true, and it highlights just how much attention this case is getting.
Oh, yeah.
And, in the middle of all of this, you have a source close to Justin Bieber saying, he's focusing on being a dad.
Yeah, just trying to lay low.
Just tripping to lay low, which you can understand. But it makes you think about what was going on during that mentorship. Did anyone try to protect Bieber? Or was he just another person in Diddy's orbit that, people looked the other way?
Yeah, and it's really scary to think about. And it makes those comparisons to Jeffrey Epstein even more unsettling.
Yeah.
Because you've got these incredibly wealthy, influential men who are surrounded by other powerful people. And they're accused of these horrendous acts.
Yes.
And you see this pattern of silence that just allows it to continue.
And I think what's important for people to understand is that while we can't equate these two situations directly, the Epstein case tragically demonstrated how deeply entrenched these systems of power and silence can be.
Yeah.
And this isn't just about one celebrity. It's about recognizing the potential for abuse within these systems.
It's about looking at the bigger picture.
Exactly.
So how did Diddy cultivate this image? Because it wasn't just the music. It was the parties, the lifestyle. Like, he built a brand on this excess, this exclusivity. And it makes you think, did that help shield him? Did it make people afraid to question what might have been going on?
That is such a good point. Because you're right. Diddy's persona, the Diddy brand, wasn't just music. It was aspirational. It was this invitation to a world of luxury and power. And when you're in that world, within those parties, the lines of what's acceptable, what's okay can get really blurry, especially when you have these power dynamics at play.
And especially for someone who is trying to get to the top.
Climb that ladder, yeah.
And that's what makes this so interesting, that blurring of the lines. Because on the outside looking in, it's all very glamorous. But for those on the inside, the reality might be very different. And that's what we're going to get into next. We're going to look at the firsthand accounts, the allegations, and how they challenge the public image that Diddy so carefully created.
It's wild, right? These parties are practically the stuff of legend.
Right. You've got Diddy himself back in the day, like, bragging, yeah, we had to put locks on the doors to keep people in. And then you have Khloe Kardashian, like, casual dropping, oh, yeah, half the people are naked. It's just, I don't know, it hits different now.
It does, because those details, those little glimpses into what went on, they take on a whole other meaning now. It makes you question what was considered acceptable,
Wow.
Especially with the power dynamics, the NDAs, the potential for for lack of a better word, coercion.
Yeah, those NDAs, I mean, they're everywhere in Hollywood, but they can also be used to silence people, right?
Absolutely.
Did anyone at those parties, did they feel pressured to just go along with it? To protect Diddy, to protect that image, even if they had concerns?
It makes you think about who might have tried to speak up but felt like they couldn't, especially young people new to the industry. You're eager to please, maybe a little starstruck, you're asked to sign something. You might not even fully grasp what you're signing away.
And on top of that, you have the fear of retaliation.
Oh, absolutely.
People's careers in Hollywood can be over in an instant if they're on the wrong side of someone powerful. It takes a lot of courage to speak up and potentially risk everything. That's why when you see someone like Ice Cube basically saying, nope, I wasn't there, don't associate me with that, it kind of makes a statement, even if it's just a small one.
It does. It goes against the grain. It chips away at that culture of silence. It says, I'm not playing this game. And that's powerful. It plants a seed, maybe gives someone else the courage to speak up too.
It makes you wonder what other conversations are happening behind closed doors, right?
Right.
And then you bring Justin Bieber into the mix. I mean, he was so young when Diddy took him under his wing. It's hard not to look at that whole situation differently now, knowing what we know.
You're right. And it's not just about Diddy, right? It's about the whole system. The people around him, the ones who benefited from his success, the ones who maybe ignored some red flags along the way. Did anyone try to protect Bieber? Or was he just, another piece of the puzzle?
It's a lot to process. And it makes you realize this isn't just a Hollywood problem, is it? This whole thing about power and turning a blind eye to bad behavior, it's everywhere.
100%. It's in every industry, every corner of the world. The question is, how do we change it? How do we create a culture where people are held accountable for their actions?
It's such a big question. Where do we even begin?
It starts with awareness, with having these conversations, even when they're uncomfortable. It's about believing people who come forward, amplifying their voices. It's about challenging the systems that allow this to continue to happen. It's about asking ourselves, what am I willing to tolerate? And what am I willing to do to change it?
So beyond just talking about it, what can we actually do? Because it's easy to feel powerless in all of this.
I hear that. It's a huge undertaking, but it starts with small steps. Educating ourselves, educating others, supporting organizations that are fighting for justice and equality, holding people in power accountable.
And being mindful of our own choices, too.
Exactly. Who are we supporting? Where are we spending our money, our time, our attention? Are we perpetuating the problem, or are we actively working to dismantle it?
Because at the end of the day, real change requires a collective effort.
Right. It does. It takes all of us.
Shifting the power dynamic.
Yeah.
Creating a culture where everyone feels safe, respected, empowered to come forward.
That's what we need. And that brings us to a really important part of this whole conversation, the legal ramifications. Because if these accusations against Diddy are true, the legal system has to do its job.
Right. These are not light accusations.
Absolutely not. We're talking racketeering, sex trafficking. These are charges that span decades.
Yeah.
If he's found guilty, Sean Combs could be facing serious prison time.
It's interesting. One of the articles we read compared his case to R. Kelly's.
Oh, wow.
Who was, convicted of similar charges.
It's a difficult comparison to make directly, but it's an important one. You have these incredibly powerful men in the music industry, and they're accused of using their positions to take advantage of people. It highlights a very dark side of the industry.
And it reminds us that this case is about so much more than just Diddy, right?
Right.
It's about confronting a larger societal issue. It's about the abuse of power and how often it's overlooked when the abuser is wealthy and successful.
It's a wake-up call and hopefully a turning point. We have to examine our own roles in these systems. We have to do better for ourselves, for each other, for the future.
It really makes you think, what does accountability really mean?
Yeah, if we want real change, it can't just be about one guy going to jail. We have to actually break down the systems that allowed this to happen in the first place.
Because just going through the legal system, it doesn't always mean that justice is served, right?
It's a start, but it's definitely not the whole story. Even with Epstein, he died before his trial, but what was scary was the network he had. The people who helped him, who looked the other way, it showed how these things can stay hidden for so long.
And with Diddy, you get those same vibes, the NDAs, people afraid to speak up. It's like that same playbook all over again.
Exactly. Silence is what protects these systems. And it's usually the people with the least amount of power who get pressured into staying quiet.
It's like we're almost told to accept that some people are just too big to fail.
Yeah.
They have the money, the fame, so we ignore the bad stuff.
Classic case of the emperor's new clothes, right? But We can't just acknowledge it. We have to stop putting these people on a pedestal. Success doesn't erase bad behavior.
So how do we actually unlearn that? It feels like it's so ingrained in how we view these powerful figures.
It starts with changing our values. We got to stop worshiping money and fame and start valuing things like integrity, empathy, holding people responsible for their actions.
Basically, real power is using what you have to help others, not exploit them.
Exactly. Give a voice to the people who have been silenced, hold everyone accountable, and build a culture where people feel safe enough to speak up.
Which brings us back to the whole point of this deep dive, right? Celebrity
Okay.
culture, abuse of power,
Yeah.
and what we can actually do about it.
Right. It's not enough to just listen to this and be like, oh, that's messed up. What responsibility do you feel you have? You have a voice, you make choices every day. How can you use that to chip away at these systems?
Because knowing something is wrong without doing anything about it, it doesn't help anyone. It's time to stop just being bystanders. We have to demand better for ourselves, for each other, for the future.
Absolutely. If you want to see a real difference, you have to be the change. Challenge the status quo, speak up, and let's build a better future together.
And on that note, we're going to wrap up this deep dive. But remember, this conversation isn't over. Let's keep talking about it, challenging the norms, and creating a world where everyone has a chance to thrive.
Thanks for joining us.